That's the law that prevents on-demand evictions and also established a 5% rent cap. We were one of the first cities in the state that went into effect. Now, the problem with 1482 is it's an affirmative defense. For those of you in law school out there, that means you can use it in your response to an unlawful behavior for eviction. The problem with that is what was CRLA, fair housing, they're completely overwhelmed. So we've got to find a funding source for that. HUD is supposed to be the funding source for fair housing. So we've got to find a way to get the states and the feds to give us more resources for that. If we have discretionary funds available, I'll make those funds available. Thank you.
Do you email them?
The 17 Council of Governments is developing a new regional housing trust fund that will provide key funds for housing development projects and other solutions. Do you think the city should provide substantial funding for the launch of this fund? And do you have ideas of how the regional housing trust fund could be permanently funded?
Okay, yes. Well, first of all, I'm very proud of our COG's role in this project. We're one of the first in the state, again, implementing a housing trust fund. There's some already functioning ones throughout the state, and we'll do our learning from them. I've been advocating for 3 years for this. On our local COG, on the San Joaquin Valley Regional Early Action, is the state housing regional agencies, and at the state level with the League of Cities and the California Council of Governments. It's really exciting to see it finally taking some shape here. Funding a housing trust fund is complicated. The city, state, and the federal government might all make contributions at one time or another. They're rarely the primary funding source. I'm not opposed to the city being one of the contributors. Discretionary funds are available, but we need to look at those sources for long-term funding. The idea I really want is a dedicated fee attached to title transfer. Anytime a house gets sold in the city, they pay a fee that funds the housing trust fund. Thank you.
Yes, front lawn.
So I'm going to start with regional housing trust fund. Program funds are only as good as who's administering them and who's overseeing them. Because I can tell you right now that we have the money to fund as much improvements as we want to fund. But there is no accountability, there is no transparency as to where this money is going. There's no data analytics for the outcomes for these programs. And one of the ways that if we were to go ahead and go do this fund, putting a land tax on the properties that are dilapidated, that out-of-town investors that have purchased property and just let them sit here, that add to the decay of our neighborhoods. You start taxing those people until they do something to improve that property, which will then benefit the community, make it a healthier environment to live in. We're going to have enough money to help support that. And at the same time, our community is going to be improved, a nicer place to live, and more amenities for us to enjoy.
Thank you, Mr.
So let me start out by saying I'm a big fan of housing trust funds. But I will say this, when I read the question about substantial, I'm a little leery of Stockton shouldering the full burden of the housing trust fund when this is a county-wide project. And I'm also leery because Stockton tends to house the price-out residents from other nearby cities. And they get to move their folks over to Stockton, and they get to say, we don't have a lot of, low-income people in our community, which is call it out. So I will say this, it should be evenly, not evenly shared, but there should be a formula in terms of how the city governments here and the county fund this. Because again, it's a good program to have. The other way that I think we should also be looking at is bond, right? We're coming out of the recession, we're coming out of bankruptcy, we're finally getting some credit ratings that are very favorable to the city. And so I think a one-time investment from some of these bonds can really move the needle, but I also think other cities around the county need to do their fair share as well.
Thank you, Mr. Butler.
About the funding, I'm always in favor of all the funding, for any good cause. The only thing is, again, the implementation and, the thing is like who's in charge of it. We are getting all these kind of funds, but it's hardly like we can see in our community. I was just checking on one of the interviews of one of the gentlemen like we got $60 million last year for homelessness. And I still see that, in our, it's increasing day by day in our society. The thing is, like we're not using that money in the right direction. So I mean, if we're using all these funds in the right direction, definitely we can cope up with the situation, we can handle all these troubles and everything. But the problem is we're not. So that's the main thing. There is hardly any practical work done in the community. It's just talks, and talks. That's it. Thank you.
First of all, thank you to everyone who submitted questions. But for some reason, I feel called to my part to answer the ones that are coming from the community in which it's affected the most, which is our unhoused community. We have folks here who are unhoused. We're asking you folks questions here. So what is the plan for the unhoused community from your perspective? And would you be willing to hire someone that is unhoused today? Mr. Khan, work with
Can you repeat your question, please?
Of course I can. What is your plan for our unhoused community? And remember, you're talking to folks in the audience that are actually unhoused. And is there opportunities within your plan to hire folks who are unhoused?
Just like I said, first of all, when we sit down, with all the stakeholders of the city of Stockton, and if I get elected, I'll just sit with them and see, like on each project, we just want to see what we're getting for that, what kind of resources we have. I'm so positive that if we don't have enough resources, we can, I can bring so many volunteers, who can just help us in this. The problem is that we are getting all these millions and millions of dollars, and I hardly see any of them spent on our community. So, I mean, my basic answer to this is, it's possible. I mean, we can cater those people with housing and everything, the one they're in need. But just to utilize all these resources we have, the funds we have, so we can use it on the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll say this. Homelessness and the unhoused is not a new issue in Stockton. The shelter was built in the 80s, right? Lebanon State Hospital was closed. But it was 300 beds, and that was enough to shelter people through the night. 2016, 2015, it spiked, right? Now we're close to 3,000 people that are unsheltered and homeless. And how many beds do you still think we have? 300. There's a resource issue. I think the city needs to find money and put money into temporary shelter spaces, campsites. We need to have folks leave the public right of ways, right? Levees, parks. We need to get that back to the community, but we also have to help them to find some shelter. So it's a resource issue. To the question of hiring in house, absolutely. The Department of Housing and Homelessness are proposing for the city is similar to Office of Violence Prevention. They have ex-gang members, ex-offenders, people that are informally incarcerated out in the community doing violence prevention. So we should have the unhoused also working in similar positions to be able to work with the unhoused in the community. So my time is up. But thank you.
Somebody's talking about day one. Day one, here's my vision. Okay, 47 spots. I have a general contractor. I have an engineer. I've been pushing for this for 3 years with every level of government in this city, just to fall upon deaf ears. I have 2 of my guys here that are currently homeless, that are coming out of homelessness. We need to stop trying to control people and empower people. They are not children. They are very capable of doing their own laundry. There is no need to fund $400,000 to wash people's clothes. If you look at the demographic, you can know that they burn their clothes for fuel for fire when they're dirty, and they go get new clothes. So why are we spending $500,000 to help them wash their clothes? Of course, I would hire any homeless person because they are just like us. I just had a conversation with him yesterday that I was 10 thrown away by PD, and he brought up Mayor Tubbs' guaranteed income.
Thank you,
So
Ms.
they're
Lewis.
capable individuals.
So we do have funded projects that have been, Tom Centers Calder's quarters is almost completely finished right now. So it's not like we've never finished anything. We have two huge projects that we have to finish that have taken the majority of our homeless funding over these last several years. And that's the navigation center on the grounds of the Stockton Shelter for the Homeless and the Pathways Project at St. Mary's. So if we get those built, that's almost 500 beds right there, okay? And they're funded, and they have project managers, and they're gonna happen, but they've gotta happen sooner rather than later, so that's where I'll put my energy. So we've got, going back to the question, would I hire a homeless person? Of course, it's not a difficult question. When I do the point in time count every year, we run into people that are already working. They're living in their cars, they're living in their tents, and they're going to work every day. Give them the dignity of work, absolutely.
Thank you. We're near the end of this session. You guys are gonna take 1 more minute to do your ending spiel for everyone. We'll start on this side.
Do those two in a row every time. I'm not so sure about that. Still gets the same deal down the end. Okay, okay, my closing. I'll stand up for this one. Everyone else has stood up at one point or another. Yeah, it does. All right, between my years in education and my years on the city council, a lot of you have had the opportunity to get to know me. You're either gonna vote for me or not. I get that. Few of you are still on the fence about it. So let me do my best to try and move you on. So I'm gonna go back to my first comment, because I didn't finish that bit about homeless housing. Number one, we need to revise the Stockton economic stimulus plan, which gives breaks to our developers for developing certain types of housing to focus on that entry-level housing we talked about before. Apartments, condos, small houses. You know, right now there's nothing in that Stockton, in the city of Stockton. Okay, the other piece is let's rehab our brownfields because we need space for housing. I've been spending the last 3 years going to the National Brownfields Conference with the EPA and learning how we can get more money to make that happen here and more room for housing.
That's what canceled. Okay, now I know where you've been going. Huh?
So I've been in Stockton since 1982. I've lived on every side of town. I used to be on Rockville Valley, like North Street. I used to hang out right here at 8th and Phelps in the questionable house on the corner. I lived out west, out east, and out north. Everybody from out south knows about that spot. I am doing this because I have been homeless before. I lived in a trailer for 3 years. I understand what it takes to fix this situation. If you have a leaky roof, you aren't calling a plumber. The streets of Stockton need help. They need nurturing, they need caring, and they need a vision and a solid plan to fix this city. We cannot take any more of the same. With Mr. Patty and Ms. Boswell here, we have a collective total number of years of 60 years plus in office here. I'm not a politician, but I am from Stockton, and I fight every day for this city. I'm already turning crime around by getting people off the streets and getting them into programs. I've already had 104 people out.
That was good.
So I want to repeat my name or what I'm running for. Most of you know who I am, and I know most of you here. I will say this, I want to thank the candidates that are here today that showed up. It was important for me to show up, to be here, to speak to you, share ideas. And I had, unfortunately, some of my opponents who didn't decide to show up. The polls say differently, they're front runners. Now I will say this, ask yourself a question. If the polls show that they don't need the South Side, they don't need certain communities to get their initiatives done, it's going to be another four plus years of ignoring the entire city aside Stockton. So again, I want to thank everybody who showed up today because you guys are important. I had other things to do on other days, but I canceled that because it was important for me to be here to allow you to listen to who I am and to be here for the South Side. So thank you all for showing up.
That's it, Marty. You gonna show up, Marty? Hey, you gonna show up? Let's see.
Just, last note, I was saying, there are a lot of issues, related to Stockton. The first and foremost issue is, that our youth, I mean, to just lay, like a strong foundation for a building, we need to work on our youth. I have plans for our youth, so they don't go straight to gangbangs and all the other stuff. And, just want them to be on the footing, just get good education and be on top of that, The other thing is, the homelessness. Right now in front of you guys, I'm a new Facebook person, but I just want to let you know that I have plans. And if I get elected, just give me 1 year, and I'll just finish all this homelessness and stuff. I'll prove it to you. I have plans, it's possible, all these millions of dollars, trust me, if we just place them on the right spot, the homelessness. A lot of people get us in trouble. It's possible.
What a roller coaster. Oof. I think your job was bad. Fugazi, dude. Fugazi, dude. Hey, you're talking trash about you. You should have showed up today. You should have showed up today, Fugazi.
She said it's the first one she's missed.
Yeah. Why today? Oh my God. I'm like, hey, she should have stopped now. I'll tell you that. She should have stopped now. Like, this is one of the big ones.
Especially since we need to know where she is.
Well, exactly.
Where is she?
Where's her?
Where is she? What's she doing?
Yeah, I'm gonna call her. I'm gonna call her.
Call her right now. This is a lot.
What's your name?
No. Wait, what's her down before I got the name?
Yeah, but what's your TikTok name? Where's D's mom? Just extra. Where's D's mom? Free D's
Before
mom.
we get started, just a reminder about the F.O.N. This is the south side, we represent excellence, we represent part of the city that usually gets underrepresented, it gets invested, and this is our time to do that. So if we want these candidates to show the respect that we deserve, we should be doing the same. Let's all be beautiful mirrors of each other this evening. Remember to scan the codes around the room for the housing survey. We're not going to waste any more time. We're going to jump right into this. Please introduce yourselves to our community. The city of Stockton is about to adopt a new housing element and housing action plan. As council members, what will be your top priorities for housing and keeping people in their homes in the south side? And how we are approach is different from what the city is doing now. And we'll start with Mr. White. Can you hear me back in the back? Yeah.
You hear me in the back? First of all, before I start, I'd like to see all the hands that live right here in District 6. Please show your hands. No. Rest of you don't live this hand. We'll talk to the 12 people in here right now. I'm going to live over here. I'm going to live over here. I'm not talking to you.
Mr. White, will your time
That's my presentation.
First of all, everybody up here that talks about landlords, what needs to be done. Keep one thing in mind. None of them have no house. They don't even own the one they live in. They might be rich, but they don't own the one they live in. So they don't know nothing about it. It might be nice. But one thing keep in mind, It's not the doghouse, it's the dog that lives in the house that doesn't mess up the house. They don't let me go get a dog and put me in a brand new house and come back 6 months and see what it looks like. So always keep that. You don't like it, but it's the truth. It's a dog, it's a real dog like it.
Thank you, Mr. White. Decorum, please remember decorum.
Good evening. So my name is Jason Lee, for those of you that don't know me, but most of you in here know me because I'm from the South Side. I'm privileged to be back here in the South Side area of the city of Stockton. Let me just say the city's doing a lot of good things, but one thing that I've been hearing all night is a lot of rhetoric and stuff you hear from people who want to rally you up and wait on Superman. You have to have plans. You have to have partnerships. So part of what I'd like to do, instead of being the same thing over and over and over, is to introduce Stockton to people who can come and invest in it. You know, they need to have, the city needs to have private partnerships. And I'm going to talk a lot about that today, but I want to say shout out to the young kids that we brought for my campaign today. When you learn more about my story, before I started my company that's worth $50 million, I was homeless, sleeping on my friend's couch. You know, he runs my business. So this is a very important topic. It's not just about getting rounds of applause. I want to believe that you heard people that have a plan. Thank you.
That was Dee's mom.
Thank you for having me. I'm Sonda, a grassroots underdog candidate and the only community volunteer for the past 37 years in the community I have lived. I'm running because before I retired from a life of service, I want to afford the same opportunity to District 6 that I had called home for 22 years. Without being official in the city council, I continue moving District 6 forward. In 2021, I successfully got the Big Bad Ordinance repealed that prevented economic growth in our community. I am about art, action, accountability, result, responsibility, and transparency. I am proactive, problem solver, decision maker with common sense.
Okay, our next question. We'll start with you. Even before COVID, 64% of South Stockton and downtown residents were rent burdened. They spent more than a third of their income on rent, continuing to increase. What would you do as a council member to support renters on the south side and keep our residents in this community? Would you focus on new policies like rent stabilization, or are there existing programs that the city should fund?
Thank you for asking that question, so because that intertwines with my first question. I'm coming and said, well, what the city is doing now? Nothing.
No.
Nothing, because you know what they do is
No.
nothing, because you know what they do is they keep reinventing, and let's keep planning, expecting us to forget. But you know, one thing that they are pro is asking for more money, and they do nothing about to solve the problem. And I'm very resourceful person, like for example, why not do partnership with other cities that actually are doing something about rent control, partnership with the housing authority, with the human,
Okay, so the first thing is, let's talk about the fact that the city council members who are currently there over budgeted $50 million, and they're still running around telling you to pay more taxes because they're going to fix the issues when they're not going to do anything. The reality is that there are programs like private partnerships with Delancey Street in San Francisco. People don't want to talk about San Francisco, LA, and Stockton because they want to keep people in this cycle of insanity, thinking that they're the only people that are going to be your savior, and that's not true. You can look at cities that have huge homeless populations. I have houses in them, and I know what they're doing. The one thing for sure rent stabilization. I met a young lady the other day who's a medical assistant at a county hospital, and she has children, and she makes $18.53 an hour. When you multiply that times 40 and you take away taxes, homelessness in housing isn't just people who are choosing to be on the streets or they're on drugs, they're people who can't even afford to live day by day. So we know South Stockton's been underinvested in, and we know that they need to be more than a dedicated job, rent control so people can save their time and be able to reinvest in the South Side area that has been completely robbed of opportunities for decades. So that's just the beginning.
Don't do it.
Let's go. Why not?
Oh,
Why not?
Yes, can you?
Of course.
Ladies and gentlemen, decorum, let him answer the question.
Yes.
That's why I get you come on there. Google Ralph White and see what I can do on the council, what I have. I got over 3,000 houses in South Stockton, when I first got on the council. But after that, I'm the one that got Tom Vernon to build Western Ranch. I'm the one that had to build, Little John Creek. I'm the one that got him to build all the houses. He's the only one, roofing, spanners. They wouldn't come south. They didn't want to build south. But I got to build down. I built 2 houses out there in Western Ranch myself.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Asking them to walk back.
Come on, I'm showing the tree right now.
What do you think the city should be doing to assist the unhoused? What services, if any, should the city provide and how should they be implemented? And we'll go again with you, Mr. Walker.
One thing they should do, I have a plan that can house over 3,500 people. One is take the racetrack. Those houses over there, each one of them is like 12 by 11 bedroom. You can put 1,900 at that. You can go out to the prison that they don't got that, if they shut down doing nothing with it, you can put at least 2,000 people, that's not more than that, 3,000 people in the prison, just to get them off the street, so they won't be cold, have to be on the side and burn their clothes. So that's the plan that we can get done, and I know how to get money from the state to get it done. But you ain't gonna happen when you have a bunch of people up there, you have one business person sitting on the council, not one.
When I'm over here, I'm much good to have a business person on the council. Let's put a face to this. Nobody's talked about the pit count. Does anybody know what that is? That's point in time count. How many homeless people on the street right now? 893 in 2022. Why is it 2024? And I've gone and researched and called everybody, nobody knows. You should be able to know the number and the faces to your problem if you're actually going to try to fix it. Number 2, he talks about my houses. I'm not going to throw a go Google surviving Ralph White. Because housing funds in this community also starts with putting landlords who are slumlords in jail. The third thing I'll also say, because accountability is a real thing, you can do it. But when I drive to City Hall and see homelessness outside, everybody that's currently there, including your vice mayor who's not here tonight, who bailed on the last one and lied and said she wasn't invited, she can get them outside of City Hall. She's not going to take them from in front of your house. The last thing is that there are laws in the city. So while there are social services and wraparound services to provide, if you pass an ordinance that it's illegal to sleep in a park, then you at least start by removing people from the park so our kids can take their parks back. There's a whole comprehensive plan that I can't get up.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
It will be solved.
What do you think the city should be doing to assist the unhoused? What services, if any, should the city provide and how should they be implemented?
The first thing that comes to my mind is where there is a will, there is a way. And that's why the city is not doing anything to help the unhoused. Because why do they want to end the unhoused? Because, hey, that's the cow, they're drinking the milk. We can end the homelessness crisis by stabilizing people to shelter, moving them into permanent housing, and implementing assistance programs to keep them in their housing. We cannot only reduce, but eliminate homelessness in Stockholm. We can also need to create a system to identify the chronically homeless and match them to appropriate affordable housing, coordinated service systems to support long-term housing stability, and create enough permanent housing to meet the demand. Since I'm retired and I do have plenty of time, I flew to Austin, Texas, and I went to see the tiny houses. How come the
Thank you, Ms. Moreno.
doing it?
Thank you.
What's going on, guys? Why don't you do it?
We have time for one question for our audience for our district candidates. If elected, would you advocate for universal basic income?
I definitely will, because at this point, even myself is struggling. I mean, because why not? Because I heard also that there was someone that is in the city council that actually took advantage of the universal income. Why not? Because, I'm in front of my people because I'm one of you. And the reason that you saw me here, because I sat there so many years and I'm at fault and we are at fault because we tolerated too much. We don't elect people, to become queens and big egos and with power holders. I'm running for this position to continue doing what I have been doing for the past 37 years. And yes, I can do it.
When elected, will you advocate for universal basic income?
So let's be clear, I don't believe in being basic, but what I support there being a floor for folks, yes, but I do believe that the city should do more to invest in being able to reach the ceiling. I think that there needs to be development programs for people to be able to start or expand their businesses. People need to be able to get skill training so they can be, the MA, the medical system that I met is making $18.53 an hour should be able to become an LVN or an RN if she chooses to, with people like Rita who runs the hospital and has access to those programs. People like Olu who have those apprenticeship programs for young people and people that learn skills to be able to build their way out of the hole that the city is putting in. South Stockton has had a strategic oppression for decades. When I got shot right across the street, all the way from when my brother lived in Sierra Vista to running the streets, now when you look at the development of the housing in Sierra Vista, you do see that there's been some investment in the city, but we need people to know that even that should be the stepping stone to you moving on to your own home and owning your own property. Stockton needs to get to a place where the people understand they deserve better and hold everybody at City Hall and the city manager and the community accountable to delivering you what you're promising as we earn your trust.
Thank you.
The city manager works for the city council. The city attorney works for the city council. The city clerk works for the city council. You don't control them. You control them if you're their boss. But we do not have not one business person sitting on that council. It's not one business person running right now, but me. I got over 300 and some thousand houses built, as I said a few minutes ago, but I had over $109 million built in South Stockton, but in the first 3 years on the council. All the South occurs because you see South of the Charter by Martin Luther King. I named Martin Luther King with Reverend Morris back there. Martin Luther King was named by Ralph White. The thing is, I know what I can do. I can become a little bit more than the average person by being one of the dumbest. And think, I'm not going to give you no promises, because if you never did it before, hell, you can't do it. Don't let nobody tell you that. Not when they've been here 3 months.
Thank you, Mr. White. Before we allow you folks to do your last spiel, just for the record, all the candidates for District 6 were invited via multiple medias and forms of communication. So these are the ones who were able to make it here today. So lastly, we'll start with you, Mr. White. If you want to take 1 minute to do your ending spiel for us.
No.
The reason why that Kimberly is not here tonight, because she got 30 folks who came, she called me door. She did great 2 or 3 times at the check place. That is what happens to our.
I was waiting for this to happen. I've been dying for this. Through the chair.
Nobody walk by here, God needs to be done, just be happy. So let's get it out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The chair. Someone tap
To all the volunteers, my family, my friends, these young people who do a marketing behavior for you knocking on the doors and telling people that a vote for me is a vote for you. I appreciate you. You know, what I will say is that I've been very big on accountability in City Hall. There's a lot of personal things going on behind the scenes in terms of holding the city accountable. Those of you that I see in the room that were in the meeting with me and the management at City Vista that has divided the community, I was very clear about talking to Housing Authority about that being one vista. They've already followed up with phone calls. This is all about South Stockton saving Stockton. And when I say that is because when you elect somebody who's not afraid, not a part of the establishment, it doesn't mean, already said I donate my salary to you in the South Stockton residential area to continue the sport. I don't need anything from the city other than your vote so we can work together to turn the city around. Superman is not a real person. We're Superman in the room. So be very clear that when I get elected, we're going to clean this place up and get back to business.
What about Dragon Ball Z? What about Dragon Ball Z? I got a question about Dragon Ball Z. What do you think about Dragon Ball Z?
I'm running, well, 12 years ago, I retired from the labor force. However, I'm reaching the point, that I also need to retire from community work. 37 years ago, I made a promise, and I'm getting the age, that I do want to offer my district 6 the same opportunity that I did in every single city that I live. Because when Kimberly Walkley told me and promised that she was going to put bathroom on Sandra Smith, and 3 years later, still the park has no bathroom. I am Martin Luther King, I have a dream, and actually the city manager said $50 million allocated to this. So I bet my first priority is gonna be to put the bathroom on Sandra Smith and bring a gym and also
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I get James, Catherine. I heard that over there, bro.
So all the questions that were not answered tonight will be forwarded to the candidates. Please keep an eye on the RSC Instagram and other channels where we might post some of the candidates' responses to these questions.
750. 750.
I'd like to bring the organizer of this forum to the stage, Ms. R.C. Thompson, Executive Director of the event.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone for coming. Thank you to all the candidates for coming out for your community. It was the intent to support this area, this region. We support the South Side. So we also support the South Stockton Promise Zone area from downtown Harding Way all the way back. So we advocate in 7 interest areas. You see the individuals with their gray shirts on. They're the senior project coordinators. They help lead change in economic and workforce development and housing and trauma, right? We have a lot of trauma on the South Side. So how are we bridging the gaps? We do a lot of work and we love to work